The wind cut through the morning air like a blade, cold and sharp, slicing across the cracked pavement of Franklin Avenue in Brooklyn. Lena kept her head down, her hands buried deep in frayed fingerless gloves, pushing a rusted shopping cart overflowing with crushed bottles and cardboard. Her patched coat flapped behind her with every gust, and her sneakers, mismatched and duct-taped, squeaked faintly as she walked. Pedestrians passed her with narrowed eyes, or no eyes at all, as if she were invisible, as if she were trash, just like the things she gathered. She stopped at the corner of Maple and 3rd, outside Donnelly's Bakery, a place where the smell of cinnamon buns and fresh coffee was only ever a torment, never a comfort. The red brick walls of the shop gleamed in the morning sun, and a police cruiser idled across the street. Officer Nathan Briggs leaned against the hood, sipping his coffee, eyes drifting lazily across the street. Then his gaze sharpened. Lena wasn't digging through the trash this time. She wasn't collecting bottles or cans. She reached into her cart slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a strange object, wrapped tightly in a dark blue cloth. Briggs squinted. She walked to the large, black-lidded trash can near the bakery's side wall. With reverence, she knelt beside it, unwrapped the cloth, and revealed an old wooden mirror, oval-shaped, weathered, with a cracked corner and tarnished metal bolts holding the back together. She placed it gently inside the trash bin. Not tossed, not dropped. Placed like it was something sacred. Then something strange happened. A shaft of light struck the mirror's glass at just the right angle. The sunlight, bouncing off the bakery's window and a chrome side mirror from a delivery van, hit the surface and created a cascade of reflections. One of them landed, coincidentally or not, directly on the security camera mounted above Donnelly's Bakery. Briggs took a step forward, frowning. In that reflection, just for a second, he saw something that should not have been there. Not the street, not himself, but a room with no windows, concrete walls, dim yellow light, and inside it, a child, no older than 10, gagged and bound, eyes wide with terror. "What the hell?" Briggs muttered, blinking. The image flickered, gone as quickly as it had appeared. He stared at the trash can, at Lena still kneeling in front of it, and his hand instinctively went to his radio. "This is Unit 42 requesting backup at Maple and 3rd. Possible code. I don't even know what code. Just send someone now." Lena stood up slowly, turning to face him. Her eyes were hollow but fierce. "You saw it, didn't you?" she asked softly. Briggs hesitated. Saw what? Her lips tightened. The truth. The street around them was beginning to stir. Curious onlookers, drawn by the commotion, began whispering. Some pulled out phones. A few recognized Lena and rolled their eyes. "It's just the trash lady," someone muttered. "Always acting weird." But Briggs was no longer looking at her like she was crazy. His gaze bounced between the camera, the mirror, and her face. "What was that? How did you—" "I didn't do anything," she said. "I just gave the mirror a voice." The sound of sirens echoed in the distance. Briggs stepped forward, unsure if he should detain her or protect her. "You're coming with me. We need to talk." Lena didn't resist. She simply nodded and picked up the blue cloth. The mirror remained in the trash, reflecting nothing now but the dark interior of the bin. As the backup units arrived and the scene was cordoned off, Lena sat in the back of the police cruiser, staring out the window with distant eyes. "Soon," she whispered. "They'll see all of it." Back at the precinct, the footage from the bakery's security camera was pulled up. Officers and tech analysts huddled around the monitor. "What the hell is that?" one of them said. The screen showed the normal street view until that strange moment. At precisely 9:07:22 a.m., the camera feed flickered. For 3 seconds, the image was replaced by something else. A dim room, an industrial light overhead, and a child in a red hoodie tied to a chair. Then, just as quickly, the feed returned to normal. "Could be a glitch," one tech offered. "Could be a hack," another guessed. Lena's voice, soft but steady, interrupted them all. "It's neither." They turned to face her. She sat at the edge of the interrogation room, calm, unmoving, her fingers steepled under her chin. "I didn't tamper with the camera," she continued. "I just aligned the angles. Light, reflection, surface. The mirror was the final piece, the only way to show what they didn't want seen." "Who's they?" Briggs asked. Lena looked up at him. Her eyes, once dull and ignored, now burned with quiet urgency. "The ones who took my sister. 10 years earlier. The world had color back then. It shimmered across the surface of Lena's sketchbook, danced through glass prisms she hung from the fire escape of their third-floor apartment, and burst into brilliant patterns on the ceiling of their shared bedroom when morning light hit her handmade mirror mobiles. Her little sister Chloe would clap every time a rainbow streaked across her bedsheets. Again! Chloe giggled, her baby teeth crooked, her curls bouncing as she climbed onto Lena's lap. Lena, then a 20-year-old student at the Manhattan School of Visual Arts, smiled and tapped the hanging mirror gently with her pencil. It's not magic, she'd explain. It's just reflection. Physics. Still magic, Chloe insisted, eyes wide with wonder. That was the last year she believed in magic. Lena had always been obsessed with light, how it moved, how it changed shape, how it revealed and concealed. She spent hours photographing reflections, studying how angles could distort perception. Her professors praised her as a visionary. One called her a mirror alchemist. But none of that mattered after the park. It was a Thursday in late spring. Chloe had begged to go to Maple Grove Playground. Lena, in the middle of a final project and short on time, hesitated. But Chloe pouted, and Lena, always the soft one, relented. They walked the 6 blocks to the park. Lena sat on a bench under the sycamores with her camera, snapping photos of sunlit benches and kids on swings. Chloe ran toward the jungle gym, shouting something about racing invisible dragons. For 15 minutes, everything was normal. Then silence. When Lena looked up from her camera, Chloe was gone. She searched the park first, calling, running, frantic. Then the bathrooms, the bushes, the surrounding blocks. Nothing. No witnesses, no screams, no trace. One moment, Chloe was there. The next vanished. The police were called, posters were made, news segments aired, a tip line was set up. But days passed, then weeks, then months. The world dimmed, her parents unraveled, blaming each other, then Lena, then themselves. Her mother stopped getting out of bed, her father stopped coming home. And Lena, she dropped out. The bright, hungry girl who once saw light as a language of possibility became a shell of obsession. She moved out, took shelter wherever she could, and began living with one purpose, to see what no one else saw. At first, she scoured the city, chasing rumors of missing kids, staring into alleys and camera domes, learning to track surveillance, blind spots, and reflections. She slept in shelters, then on rooftops, then in alleys. Her body grew leaner. Her clothes faded. But her eyes only burned brighter. It was in a pawn shop in the Bronx that she found her first mirror. It looked ordinary, an antique makeup mirror with a silver frame. But when she cleaned the grime and turned it toward a convex security dome, she noticed something strange. The mirror reflected a side view of a hallway not visible from any camera. It was a trick of angles, she thought. But the idea lingered. What if she could arrange mirrors, carefully, precisely, to reveal things the cameras were never meant to see? What if the right alignment of reflections could bypass the blind spots? She started collecting discarded mirrors, small, large, cracked, intact. She'd prop them in abandoned corners of the city, document the way light bent through them, sketch diagrams on soggy paper, and pin them in her hideout. She began to see patterns, unusual shadows, brief flashes of movement, reflections of rooms that didn't match their surroundings. Then one night, 3 years after Chloe's disappearance, in the warped surface of a mirror she had hung across from an old storage facility in Queens, she saw her. It was just a flash, a blink. A young girl, thinner, older, pale, her wrists bound in front of her, a scar near her temple. But it was Chloe. Lena knew it the way a mother knows her child's cry in a crowd. From that night forward, she wasn't chasing shadows. She was mapping them. Over time, Lena became a ghost of the city, pushing her cart of glass and scrap, labeled a trash collector, a nuisance, a street rat. But beneath that, she was building something no one understood, a light network, a series of mirrors positioned to bend sunlight and angles in such a way that it would reveal the unseen. She believed the rooms she glimpsed were part of a hidden system, underground, shielded from GPS and surveillance, a place where the city's forgotten children were held, a place Chloe was trapped. But no one would listen. She had tried once, approaching the police with her drawings and theories. They laughed. "Lady, this is New York. You see something shiny and think it's a conspiracy?" After that, she stopped talking. She let the mirrors speak. It took her months to locate the bakery on Maple and 3rd. The camera was angled just right. All she needed was a final reflection. A carefully placed mirror at the exact time of day when the sun hit between the buildings, bouncing light onto the lens. That's what led her there that morning. That's why, when the officer stared slack-jawed at the reflection, when the child in the red hoodie flickered into the camera's view, Lena didn't flinch. She had planned for this. She had waited for this. She had come to make them see. As she sat in the dim light of the interrogation room, fingers clasped tightly, eyes steady on Officer Briggs through the one-way glass, she thought of the day Chloe disappeared. She thought of how the world had looked away, but now they were looking. Finally, the precinct conference room buzzed with nervous energy. Detectives stood in clusters, whispering urgently. Analysts tapped away at laptops, replaying the footage frame by frame. The air smelled of burnt coffee and disbelief. Lena sat in the center of it all, silent, watching. Her eyes scanned the whiteboard across the room, where a single frame from the bakery's camera feed was pinned. There, grainy but undeniable, was the image that had upended everything. A child. A red hoodie. Duct tape across the mouth. Concrete walls. No windows. No camera source. A place no one recognized, and a signal no one could trace. "It's a glitch," muttered Agent Farrow from Homeland Security, arms crossed tightly over his chest. Lena raised an eyebrow. "Is it?" "It could be an optical echo," suggested someone from IT. "A light anomaly, maybe even internal lens damage." Lena's voice cut through the noise. "You saw the girl." Everyone quieted. "She's real," she continued. "That room exists. That child exists. And the only reason you saw her," she pointed toward the pinned image, "is because I built a network that let you." Captain Briggs leaned forward. "Explain it again. All of it." Lena exhaled, her fingers trembling slightly as she unrolled a weathered, hand-drawn map onto the center table. It was a chaotic web of lines, arrows, and annotations. Dozens of small boxes were labeled with codes like G14, S2, and Myra 9. Angles and elevation notes marked the edges. Some locations were circled in red. At the center of it all was one word, Node Chloe. "It started with basic reflection theory," she began. "I mapped sunlight patterns across the city and found key locations where beams could be redirected using discarded mirrors. From there, I began calibrating those reflections to target specific security cameras." "Why?" "To hijack their sight," Lena said simply. "Not by hacking, not digitally, but optically, with light." She pointed to a segment near the bottom labeled Franklin Bakery 3rd. "That camera was angled just enough that, if I placed the right mirror at the right time of day, the reflection would hit the lens directly. But that reflection didn't come from the street." She tapped a red X. "It came from here." Agent Farrow scoffed. "You expect us to believe that your mirrors can transmit images from an undiscovered location miles away?" Lena gave a tired smile. "No, I expect you to believe the truth. The mirrors don't transmit, they reflect. That room, where the child is, exists within line of sight of one of my mirror nodes. The signal is raw light, no electronics, just reality." Briggs stepped in. "You're saying you found a hidden facility, using sunlight?" "I'm saying," Lena said quietly, "that they hid behind blind spots, behind silence, behind our habit of not looking too closely. But light doesn't lie." Silence filled the room. "Then, and the child?" asked a young officer in the corner. "She's my sister." Across the city, miles from the precinct, a different kind of silence hung in the air. Cold, concrete, artificial. The room was small, no windows. The light above buzzed faintly. The floor was stained, the air still. A young girl, maybe 11, maybe 12, sat cross-legged on the thin mattress pushed against the wall. Her wrists were free, but only because the new routine allowed supervised movement in the cell. Her eyes, gray, too old for her face, tracked every flicker of movement near the ceiling vent. She wasn't allowed to speak, not even to the others in the adjacent cells. But she remembered her name. Chloe. She whispered it to herself when no one was listening, tracing the letters on her palm with her finger. She had stopped crying years ago, or maybe weeks. Time didn't make sense here. Meals came without flavor. Lights turned off and on without explanation. Voices outside the room murmured about subjects, responses, and long-term compliance. Sometimes at night, she heard screams. Sometimes she heard nothing at all. But something had changed today. During lunch, while a guard had to check a clipboard, a flash of light had bounced across the metal wall. It hit the mirror in the corner. Just a second. But Chloe had seen it, not her reflection. Her sister's face. Then it was gone. But she knew. Lena was close. Back in Brooklyn, the decision to act was tangled in red tape. We can't authorize a raid based on an unverified optical theory, said the FBI field supervisor. It's not a theory if it works, Briggs growled. You saw the footage. Are you going to explain to the press why you sat on a missing child lead because it was inconvenient? We need jurisdictional clearance, a warrant, time. Lena stood. You don't have time. All eyes turned to her. They move the children. Every few months. If Chloe's still there, it won't be for long. And if we raid and find nothing? The supervisor asked. Lena stared at him. Then you get to call me crazy again. But if I'm right... No one finished the sentence. That night, Lena returned to her makeshift shelter, an old boiler room in a condemned building near the river. She sat in the center of her mirror wall, candlelight flickering across the surfaces. Her fingers moved over the diagrams, adjusting one, angling another. A glint caught her eye. One of the smaller mirrors reflected a dim, grainy corner of the interior she'd seen earlier. The same concrete, the same light. Then a shadow passed, a figure. Then another. Movement. She gasped and leaned forward, eyes straining. Two men in uniforms. A clipboard. They were unlocking a door. For a moment, the mirror caught Chloe, sitting upright, alert, staring directly at the reflective surface as if she could see through it. And then, Chloe smiled. Tears welled in Lena's eyes. Her hands trembled. I'm coming, she whispered. The map was alive now. In the dim boiler room, with only candlelight and hope to guide her, Lena rechecked every angle, every notation, every chalk-marked brick on her cracked wall. The mirror that had reflected Chloe, clearer than ever, was now taped into position with surgical precision. The old lenses, shards, and silver backs were no longer just found objects. They were surveillance. They were weapons. A hand-drawn floor plan of the warehouse district in the Bronx lay spread on the floor, marked in layers, sunlight paths, mirror clusters, elevation measurements, guard positions. Her old cart sat pushed into the corner, its purpose served. She wasn't gathering anymore. She was hunting. Officer Briggs stepped into the boiler room cautiously, ducking under a pipe. I've seen worse, he muttered. Lena didn't turn. I'm almost finished. He approached slowly, scanning the walls, covered with strings, clipped photos, reflection diagrams, and city zoning records. You know this is technically breaking and entering, he added. You know that what I'm doing is technically saving lives, she said, without looking up. Briggs didn't argue. So tell me again how you know where she is. Lena pointed at a cluster of red string near the center of the wall. This section of the Bronx was rebuilt after a chemical leak 20 years ago. The buildings are industrial on the surface, storage, shipping, packaging. But underneath, old train tunnels, sealed access shafts, and military-grade concrete. You think they're using them? I know they are. And now? She turned, holding up a recently captured photo, grainy but visible. Chloe, sitting cross-legged, looking straight into the mirror. I know exactly where she is. Briggs stared at the photo. How? Lena flipped over the image. See this pattern behind her? It's a bolt seam. Same spacing, same rust line as the panels used in the lower sectors of the decommissioned Line 8 tunnel. Briggs ran a hand over his mouth. You're out of your mind. She looked at him. Then leave. But if I'm right, you are, he interrupted, which is exactly why I'm staying. Miles away, beneath the surface of the city, Chloe counted seconds. She had taught herself to tell time by light changes, though they were rare. The tiny mirror fragment in her wall, once hidden beneath peeling paint, now faced outward, tilted just slightly. When the beam came, sometimes at odd angles, sometimes not at all, she caught flashes. Not of the room she was in, but of somewhere else, a movement, a map, a candle, a woman's face. It didn't make sense at first. She thought she was dreaming. But then she recognized the woman's eyes. It was the same face from her memories, just older, worn, but fierce. Lena. Chloe began to act. She dragged her mattress back slowly, a few inches a day, so it wouldn't look suspicious. She sharpened a piece of plastic from her lunch tray on the concrete wall. She began to practice lifting screws from the bed frame without tools. She studied the guards, their routes, their timing. She became what they wanted her to be, compliant, quiet, contained. But inside, she was building a plan. Back above ground, Briggs met with an old friend from his academy days, now a fire marshal with access to restricted blueprints. Lena waited in the car, scanning the structure across the street. The building in question was deceptively mundane, tall concrete walls, no signage, 2 loading docks, minimal traffic. But that was the point. Inside, according to the map, was an old elevator shaft leading to the decommissioned train level. From there, a locked tunnel section ran beneath several buildings, one of which, Lena believed, had been turned into the detention site. When Briggs returned, he looked grim. "They scrubbed the records," he said. "That lower section, officially condemned. But I found something, an old maintenance report from 3 years ago. It mentions structural stress under Building 4C. Guess what sits right over that spot?" He handed her a photo taken from a traffic cam, Building 4C. Lena leaned forward. "That's it," she whispered. "Then we move tonight." The night was thick with fog when Lena and Briggs approached the site. No backup, no warrant, just 2 flashlights, a bolt cutter, and a plan too reckless to call legal. The gate surrounding the rear of Building 4C was rusted, easy to pry open. Inside, the building was hollow, its top floors filled with crates and dust. But behind one stack of broken shelving, Lena found it. An old elevator shaft, sealed with a heavy steel grate. Briggs cut the chain. The shaft descended 40 feet, lined with black walls and old cabling. They lowered themselves down using an emergency ladder, step by cautious step. At the bottom, a metal door, partially buried in dust, blocked their path. Lena pressed her ear to it. Silence. Briggs pulled out his flashlight and whispered, "Ready?" She nodded. He pushed the door open slowly. What greeted them was not silence. It was humming. Low, mechanical, sterile. A hidden corridor stretched out, lit by motion-triggered fluorescence. Security cameras tracked slowly along the ceiling. The floor was polished, clean, too clean. They moved quickly, ducking behind structural beams, scanning each side hallway. Then Lena froze. At the far end of one hallway was a mirror, small, tilted, her mirror. And in it, for the briefest moment, she saw a flicker of movement. A child's face. Briggs whispered, "You found her." "No," Lena said, eyes narrowing. "She found us." In the cell, Chloe pressed her hand against the wall. The light had changed. The mirror was glowing again, but this time it was brighter. She smiled. The air beneath Building 4C was colder than Lena had imagined. Not just physically, though the damp concrete walls radiated an unforgiving chill, but something deeper, more ancient. A silence laced with dread, the kind of silence that had swallowed secrets for years. She and Briggs moved in low crouches, weaving between columns and electrical panels. The corridor was long and dimly lit, with motion sensor lights flickering to life only a few feet ahead of them at a time, then fading into blackness behind them, one by one. Lena's breathing was tight. Not from fear, from calculation. She counted every camera they passed, every turn, every second. Her mind was a clockwork of angles and reflection points. Briggs, on the other hand, kept his hand near his weapon. His instincts told him they were trespassing somewhere no one was ever meant to find. "I count 3 cameras in this wing," Lena whispered, stopping near a utility alcove. None pointing at the ventilation hatches. They didn't expect anyone crawling through the air ducts. Briggs grunted. "Most people don't crawl through shadows and mirrors." Lena smiled faintly. "That's why I'll win." Far down the corridor, Chloe was waiting. She had shifted her mattress again, pulled back from the wall. The guards thought she was being compliant, quiet, obedient. But she had a sharpened piece of metal from her cot's support bar hidden beneath her sleeve, and the lock on her cell door had a weak hinge, one she had been slowly working on for weeks. Tonight, the light in the mirror shard had returned, stronger, brighter, flickering slightly. That meant movement. It meant Lena was close. Chloe stood, heart thudding, and pressed her ear to the door. Nothing. Then, a faint hum, and 2 rapid, soft thuds from down the hall. She recognized the pattern. Signal knocks. Lena's signal. She whispered into the wall, "I'm ready." And then she moved. Lena opened the service panel at the intersection of the corridor's east wing. Inside, an emergency access ladder led to the old tunnel ventilation network. She looked at Briggs, her voice low but firm. "This is where we split. You cover this door. I'll crawl through the vent system and drop down from the upper duct. Chloe's cell is behind the observation wall. I mapped it based on the mirror bounce. There's a drop vent above her room." Briggs nodded. "Be quick. If I hear anything, I'm going in loud." Lena slipped into the panel and pulled it closed behind her. Darkness swallowed her. The vent was narrow, barely enough for her to slither through. Her elbows scraped metal. Sweat clung to her scalp. The deeper she went, the warmer it became. until she reached a grate looking down into a dim cell with a mattress, a cracked wall, and Chloe. The girl sat near the mirror shard, face tilted toward the light. Lena couldn't breathe. Her hand shook as she reached for the release latch on the grate. Then, movement. A guard entered the cell wing from the far side, checking a clipboard. Chloe turned, too quickly. The guard paused. Lena froze. Don't see it, she thought. Don't see her eyes. Don't see the mirror. Don't see. Hey, the guard barked. What are you doing? Chloe stood quickly, backing toward the mattress. Nothing, just cold. Where's your blanket? She didn't answer. The guard stepped inside, closer. Lena pushed open the vent silently. She dangled, gritted her teeth, and dropped. The fall wasn't far, but the landing was loud. The guard spun around, only to meet the sole of Lena's boot to his face. He crumpled. Chloe gasped, and Lena turned toward her, knees shaking, heart on fire. Hi, Lena whispered. Lena? Chloe breathed. They stared at each other. 10 years lost, 10 years between them. And now, nothing. Lena knelt and pulled Chloe into her arms. Her baby sister was taller now, thinner, but the way she hugged back, it was the same. I knew you'd come, Chloe whispered into her shoulder. I'm sorry I took so long, Lena choked. Briggs heard the crash from 2 corridors away. He was already moving before the second impact. Guards were shouting now, confused, scattered. Alarms hadn't gone off yet, but that wouldn't last. He pulled his radio. We're in. Extraction live. Secure exit. Then he saw them, 2 men in gray uniforms rounding the far corridor. He raised his weapon. Down! Now! They hesitated. Mistake. He fired a single warning shot into the wall. They dropped. He moved fast. Lena and Chloe ran hand in hand through the service corridors, heartbeats pounding louder than their footsteps. Lena knew the map by heart. Left turn, up the stairs, through the auxiliary breaker hallway, second shaft on the right. But halfway up the stairwell, the alarm sounded. A deep, mechanical scream filled the halls. Red lights pulsed along the ceiling. Briggs's voice burst through the radio on Lena's belt. We've got company. 3 more en route from North Loading Bay. I'll hold them. Get her out. No, Lena said, pressing the button. We're not splitting. Chloe looked up at her, eyes wide. You're not losing me again, Lena said. Ever. They reached the access shaft. It was narrow, rusted, but climbable. Chloe went first, her feet slipping slightly on the rungs. Lena followed, pushing her upward with one hand while holding the radio in the other. Briggs' voice cracked through again. I'm pinned. Go now. They're coming. Lena reached the top, pried open the old metal grate, and blinding light flooded the shaft. She and Chloe emerged in the upper warehouse floor, abandoned crates, dust motes in the air, silence again. But only for a moment. Then, a familiar voice. Drop it! Briggs emerged from the shadows, his gun pointed at 2 guards behind them, both raising their hands. We're clear, he said, panting. Let's go. They burst through the back exit into the night. And for the first time in 10 years, Chloe felt real air on her face. They ran 3 blocks before the backup unit met them. Sirens wailed. Blue and red lights splashed over the walls. Officers surrounded them, but Briggs stepped in front, badge raised high. Protective custody, medical evac, full federal debrief in 30. Paramedics rushed Chloe into a van. She clung to Lena's hand the whole time. You're safe now, Lena whispered. You're safe. And this time, she meant it. The reporters came in waves. At first, just the local ones, Brooklyn outlets hungry for drama. From trash picker to hero, the mirror girl who saved her sister, the woman who saw what cameras couldn't. Then came the national media. Morning shows, true crime podcasts, interviews, panels, requests for documentaries, think pieces, and TED Talks. They all wanted Lena. They wanted her story. They wanted her secrets. They wanted to frame her in 10-second headlines and primetime specials. But Lena wasn't interested in being a brand. She just wanted her sister to sleep through the night. It had been 4 weeks since the extraction. Chloe now lived in a protected care home in upstate New York, surrounded by counselors and trauma experts. She was still quiet, sometimes flinching when a door closed too hard, but she was safe. That was something. She and Lena talked every day. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they just sat on the phone in silence, breathing. That was enough too. Briggs had been cleared of any wrongdoing after a quiet internal review. No charges. No reprimands, just a nod from the commissioner and a quiet suggestion that he take a week off. He refused. He visited Chloe once. She'd given him a crayon drawing of the brave cop with the flashlight. He kept it folded in his wallet. As for the facility, what was left of it, it had been exposed in full. Hidden under 6 shell companies and a defunct security firm, the network had operated undetected for nearly 15 years. Investigators were still uncovering tunnels, sublevels, and evidence. Dozens of children had passed through. Some had been found. Some were still missing. Lena's map had led to all of it. Despite the attention, Lena refused the book deals and the talk show invites. She agreed to one thing: a public installation. Something to mark the truth. Something to make people look. It was Briggs who proposed the location, the very corner where she had first placed the mirror, in front of Donnelly's bakery on Maple and 3rd. "I figure," he said, "if the world's going to see you, it should start where it didn't." So the city approved the project. Donations poured in. Glassmakers, architects, artists, all inspired by what she'd done, by how she'd used reflections not for vanity, but for justice. It took 6 weeks. On the morning of the unveiling, the city was quiet. A light fog hung over the street, soft and silver. Lena stood beside Chloe, who was wearing a red scarf that fluttered in the breeze. Briggs stood just behind them, hands in his coat pockets, a rare smile on his face. The mayor gave a brief speech. Polite applause followed. Then they pulled away the cloth. And there it was, the wall of light. An 8-foot-tall arch of mirrors, some cracked, some clean, some tinted by time, arranged in a way that scattered sunlight across the sidewalk in gentle patterns. Behind the structure, a large pane of polished glass reflected the street, the people, and the sky. But if you stood in just the right spot, and if the sun was at just the right angle, the mirrors did something special. They revealed a hidden engraving, etched backward into the backing of the main pane, so it could only be read when reflected. The world is full of blind spots. Somewhere, someone sees you. Beneath it, in smaller print, Lena Maris and Chloe Maris. People came in crowds. They took photos, left flowers, brought children. But the best visitors, in Lena's eyes, were the quiet ones. The ones who didn't say much, who stood still, who looked at themselves in the mirror and just thought. Maybe they remembered a face they had forgotten. Maybe they recognized someone they had once ignored. Maybe they saw something, someone they were finally ready to believe. A week later, Lena returned to the boiler room one last time. It was mostly empty now. She had cleaned the mirror wall, packed away the notebooks, the diagrams, the scribbled maps, but one mirror remained, nailed crookedly above a brick ledge. She looked into it. She saw herself. And behind her, Chloe, now standing in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea. "Thought you'd want company," Chloe said, smiling shyly. Lena turned. Always. They sat on the floor, backs to the bricks, sipping in silence. Outside, the city moved on. But somewhere in the streets above, reflected off a window or bouncing between steel and glass, was a sliver of light that had once changed everything. And would again. Because Lena had proven one thing. Even when the world looks away, mirrors don't lie.